everyone, this is Anna from Savvy Cat Realty, and today I'm here to talk to you about the public transportation in Portugal. So before we start, for those of you who don't know, Savvy Cat Realty is a relocation and investment agency that helps expats move to Portugal. We work from a lifestyle perspective and help people find the best location and the best property for their own particular lifestyle needs. We don't expect you to know our country. You are just coming here. You are probably didn't have enough time to explore. So we are here as your eyes on the inside to help you get in the right place on the first try and simplify all the process along the way so you make all the right choices with the right information on your site. We work with both rentals and purchases, and you can check all the information on our website in www.savvycatrealty.com. So about today's topic, public transportation in Portugal. So Portugal, like the European countries, does rely a lot on public transportation, and there are quite a few cities where you can easily live without any cars. And most of the cities, or all the cities I would say, are perfectly walkable. You can literally walk from one side of the country to another. You just have to have the stamina because the accesses are there. So the most standard public transportation is of course bus, and you will find buses in pretty much all locations, even like the remote villages. They will generally have a bus that takes you to a main city. They are just less frequent the most remote the place is. So there are of course some places that don't even have bus, but those are really remote. Generally, you have at least a bus, but of course these are limited, and sometimes you only have them between 2 and 4 times a day. So it's not exactly the most practical thing. And if you live in this kind of villages, I definitely recommend having your own car for freedom of transportation. And the next thing would be the metro or subway. I think both things are the same as far as I'm aware. And only 2 cities in Portugal have metro. So you have the Porto and you have Lisbon. Lisbon has an even better network when it comes to public accesses, because it has, Porto also has some local trains, but Lisbon has a network of trains within the city. So you have both metro and train, and since the city does spread out quite a bit more, or at least the urban area of Lisbon does spread out a little bit more, I would say that regarding living without a car, Lisbon is the easiest place to do that because you have the most options on public transportation, and it's actually easier to get around on public transportation than to get around in the car and look for parking, because that's a nightmare and parking is very expensive. In Porto, it very much depends. It will depend on if you are going for the historic center, for example. I rarely take my car to the historic center when I'm in Porto because it's a pain to park and it costs a lot of money, and it's generally actually cheaper to pay for the Uber than it is to pay for the parking. So I generally take either Uber or metro when I go to the center of Porto. But Porto does not have such a big transport network. If you are not near a metro station, there is the buses, and they do have quite spread out. I personally don't really like to use bus because they are very often late, and they stop everywhere. So, and then they are also dependent on traffic, and so they very often take a very long time to reach your destination. So I would say metro is the easiest, and trains are the easiest ones to get around. And now going into trains, which is kind of the main topic here, because they spread out and give you a lot more options. So generally trains are often the best way to travel between cities in Portugal. You also have the intercity buses, that will be your only public transportation option when it comes to going to cities that do not have a train line. And I'm going to first mention the train options and the main train lines, and then basically you can go everywhere else on a bus. And these places you can also go by bus, but it's generally more comfortable to go by train. So the main train line in Portugal goes from Braga to Faro, and it stops in a number of major cities in between. And in any of these major cities, it's really, really easy to move around because you have both the Alfa-Pendular and the Intercidade trains, which are the two fast trains in Portugal. So the Alfa-Pendular is the express train that goes up to 240 kilometers an hour, if I'm not mistaken. And the Intercity is slightly less fast, but still quite practical and comfortable and fast enough. And more frequent than the Alfa-Pendular. The Alfa-Pendular only goes on this main line. It does not go to any of the other secondary lines. So generally when I have people that tell me they want to be in a place where they don't want to have a car but still want to visit other places in Portugal, I would stay in a medium or big city within this line. Porto and Lisbon are, of course, also within this line. So it starts in Braga, then you have Porto, then you have Aveiro, then you have Coimbra, then you have Lisbon, and then it stops, it barely stops in Alentejo, and then you have Faro. So within this line, it's pretty easy to move around. And then you have some other lines that still have intercity trains, like the one that goes to Castelo Branco. And there's at least 3 of them that also have intercity trains. And all the other lines are just regional. And regional trains can be practical for certain aspects. For example, you have a number of regional trains that connect Porto to Braga and Porto to Aveiro. And they are very practical because they are pretty much hourly and it's really easy to move around. And the same thing in the Lisbon area. You have quite a few urban, local lines that connect different regions of Lisbon using these trains that are quite frequent. They usually go either every half an hour or every hour. And they are often the most practical ways of transportation for people that live in the suburbs of Lisbon. About these trains that are regional in these areas, I would say that the Lisbon ones are known for not being particularly safe. Especially a few lines have very bad reputation, one of them being, if I'm not mistaken, the Central line. But overall, just, don't keep your belongings and your phone out and that kind of thing. In the Porto side, I honestly never had problems. Neither going to Aveiro, neither going to Braga. I always felt that the trains were perfectly safe. I also think they are quite a bit more modern. The ones in Lisbon are very old trains, and I don't know if that has an impact in it. I think it's just about the locations it passed through. There are quite a few neighborhoods that are known for high criminality rates in the Lisbon suburb areas. And when the train lines go through these suburbs, they generally tend not to be the most safe lines. So that's generally, as you could imagine, a very direct relationship between the two. Then, like I was saying, other than these regional lines connecting the main cities to the cities that are within an hour of distance of them, the other regional trains, I say they can be really nice for a touristic experience because they can have really, really beautiful landscapes. For example, the one that goes from Porto to Aveiro, it goes through a reserve area that is Baixo Fogo Lagonar, and the landscape, especially in springtime, is really, really pretty. And there are quite a few other train lines that are quite interesting from a touristic and landscape perspective, but I wouldn't recommend them from actual transportation perspective because they are very, very slow. So a few examples of this would be the Douro line. So you have a regional train line that goes alongside the Douro River, and it's a gorgeous trip to make from a touristic perspective. But I don't particularly recommend it from an actual time-saving perspective. It's definitely not time-saving. It's very, very picturesque and beautiful, but not fast. Then you also have what you called the almond tree route that goes down to the interior, and once again to like the Foscoa side that is interior of Portugal. And actually the CP, which is Comboios de Portugal, which is the Portuguese train company, has quite a few touristic programs around these kinds of things. You have a program for the almond tree viewing that is actually already sold out, and I think it's in May. Then you have the presidential tour, train line tour that is a special train that is taken out of the train museum to do this specific tour. And once again, it also sells out pretty quickly. And the prices are actually pretty high. It's 750 euros per person, but it includes wine tasting and Michelin star restaurant chef menu, if I'm not mistaken. It's a very fancy menu. And then you also have a few programs few lines that people that are recommended as a touristic experience. But once again, I wouldn't particularly recommend them as a means of transportation by itself. It can be a very interesting experience. It's not a fast trip. So this is more or less covers the train lines. Like I was saying, in places that don't have intercity train, it's probably going to be faster to go by intercity bus. There are two main companies in Portugal when it comes to intercity bus. You have Rede Expressos that has usually standard prices that don't change whether you buy it a week ahead or in the day. And then you have Flexibus, which is relatively recent in Portugal, and it very much varies with demand. So the sooner you buy, generally the cheaper the tickets are. And if you buy the closer to the date, it's generally on the supply and demand basis. So if the bus is very full, the price will be higher. So those are the two main options when it comes to buses. You also have quite a few other bus lines that connect specific locations. For example, from Caldas da Rainha to Lisbon, you have the Via Verde, that is from the Tejo, Rodoviária do Tejo company that connects quite a few cities in the Lisbon greater area. So Caldas to Lisbon, for example, being one of them. And of course, you will have these local bus lines in other locations too. So this basically covers all the public transportation that is available in Portugal. I hope this was helpful. I hope that this gives you information that you need if you are considering going to a place where you don't need a car. And I would love to hear your feedback about using public transportation in Portugal. And I will see you all again next week. We are here every week. If you are looking to move to Portugal, do subscribe to our channel. We try to release useful information on a weekly basis and also have a lot of useful information on our website in www.savvycatrealty.com. And if you want to have someone on your side giving you all the tips from an inside perspective, do reach out to us at contact@savvycatrealty.com. See you next week.